The CEO would like to know if the average discharge cost per case is roughly $6,000 in a hospital. You are given a sample of size 100. First, we need to decide what questions we are trying to answer. The questions that we are trying to answer are the following. Number 1, what does the distribution of the data look like? Number 2, where is the center? Number 3, what is the spread? Number 4, are there any outliers in the data? And number 5, do you think that the claim is valid? Let's start by assessing the type of data that we have. Since the data is based on dollars, we can assume that it is continuous. Since we are given that it is a random sample, we can assume that there is not a time order to the data and that it is static. Let's now visualize the data. Let's first plot the data. We do this first because it will dictate the type of numerical summary that we will present. Since the data is not time dependent, a run chart does not make sense here. Let's start out by creating a histogram. Here is a histogram of the data. You should be able to get a sense of the shape of the distribution from the plot. The histogram does give an indication that the distribution is somewhat symmetric. There does seem to be something going on the high side of the data that is worth checking out. Now that we have an idea about the shape of the data, let's check the data for outliers. Here are the calculations to check for outliers. We will not worry about extreme outliers at this point. We will do this by creating the interval that if any point lies outside of it, it will be considered an outlier. We find that the interval is roughly 546 to 10,592. Now we start by checking to see if at a minimum either the min or the max of the data are outliers. The min is 831.43 and the max is 11,203.72. Although the minimum is in the interval, the maximum is not. Therefore, we have at least one outlier. Now let's check for extreme outliers. Here are the calculations for extreme outliers. Since the minimum value is not an outlier, it will not be an extreme outlier. In terms of the maximum value, since it is less than the upper floor, we determine it is not an extreme outlier. Now let's look at the numerical summary. Since there is at least one outlier in the data, we will report the median and IQR. So the median cost per case is $5,644 and the IQR is $2,511.20. Now let's draw conclusions. Here are the conclusions. Number 1, the data is somewhat symmetric, although it has an outlier on the high side. Number 2, the measure of location that we will provide is the median, which is $5,644. Number 3, the measure of spread that we will provide is the IQR, which is $2,511.20. Now let's give the real-world answer. The CEO was interested in the average discharge cost and wanted to know if she could assume that it was $6,000. Well, the measure that she should look at is the median, and it is lower than $6,000 by about roughly $400. We should also report that the measure of spread is roughly $2,500, which is far too high to have much confidence in the repeatability of the median value from sample to sample.